The episode opens with Dr. Stephen Ledbetter, a brilliant geneticist demonstrating his research at Claiborne University. He has created tiny machines called nanobots that have the potential to eliminate deadly and malignant diseases. Nothing less than a medical breakthrough, this nanotechnology alters the molecular structure of the host and removes the destructive elements. As he demonstrates to his fellow peers, he takes a body of water contaminated by various man-made pollutants and introduces his solution to it. Surprisingly, the water starts clearing up until it's absolutely disease-free. His peers applaud him, followed by a Q&A session where one of the researchers asks Stephen how the nanobots differentiate unhealthy cells from normal healthy cells. Confident in his work, Stephen boasts that the nanobots not only recognize irregular cellular activity, but also repair it, which means this could be the cure for life-threatening diseases such as cancer. His boss, Dr. Norman, is not too happy with Stephen's condescending attitude and warns him to take things slow. As it happens, Stephen's overconfidence almost cost him his whole study in the past when he started tissue testing without approval. Though Stephen is reluctant to waste time, he agrees to follow protocol this time around. Suddenly, his best friend Dr. Andy Groening shows up, congratulating him for his miraculous invention. Stephen is overjoyed to learn that Andy has finally proposed to Stephen's sister, Judy. Andy asks him to be his best man, and Stephen shows him his nanobots immersed in saline solution, convinced that they could cure just about any ailment in the world. Later, Andy heads out for his doctor's appointment where his life turns upside down. What he thought of as a pulled muscle in his back is actually an aggressive pelvic cancer. The treatment options don't sound too great either. Since his cancer would respond poorly to chemotherapy, he would have to undergo surgery, which would mean having his entire leg and hip area removed. Devastated that he has just 1 year to live if he does not get the surgery, Andy thinks of Stephen's nanobots as his last hope. However, the university still needs to allow leave testing, as the nanotechnology is in its preliminary testing phase. Andy approaches Stephen asking about the effects of his nanobots on a terminal patient. When Stephen gets suspicious, Andy brushes off the topic without revealing that he was talking about himself. Later, he meets Judy at home, who is looking forward to spending her entire life with him. Unable to tell her about his diagnosis, Andy decides to pay a visit to the university. He breaks into Stephen's lab and injects himself with one of the vials harboring the nanobots. In the next scene, his physician, Dr. Katzman, is perplexed at Andy's latest X-ray. Just 3 days ago, his X-ray showed a large malignant mass in his pelvic region, which is now significantly reduced. The doctor tells Andy that he might be in remission in a week's time, even though this disease progression is medically impossible. The next morning, Andy realizes he does not need his eyeglasses anymore, since the nanobots must have healed his eyes too. Delighted with joy, he rushes to Stephen and tells him about everything. Stephen reprimands him for putting both of them in jeopardy. His experimental nanobots were far from ready to be tested on humans, and he is unsure of the adverse effects they could have on Andy. However, Andy dismisses his concerns because the nanobots have given him a new chance at life, and he does not care about the risks. He even suggests Stephen go public with this experiment, which would help him avoid 2 long years of animal testing. Despite being ambitious, Stephen cannot believe Andy's disregard for protocol and suggests deactivating the nanobots in Andy before it's too late. Nonetheless, Andy assures Stephen that since he is the one who injected himself, Stephen does not have anything to worry about. Instead, this might be the perfect opportunity for Stephen to monitor the effects of the nanobots on a live subject who also happens to be his best friend. Though hesitant at first, Stephen agrees, but on the condition that he will deactivate the nanobots as soon as he detects any abnormal behavior in Andy. From there on, Stephen regularly monitors Andy and realizes that not only did the nanobots heal Andy's 20-year-old scar and his eyesight, but also cured his cancer. He puts Andy through a set of rigorous tests. The nanobots enable Andy to stay underwater despite being unable to breathe and improve his vision to read microscopic texts from afar. The boost in his health makes him quite active with his fiancée. When Stephen mentions a logic gate that the nanobots use to communicate with each other when given a command by Stephen, Andy decides to take things further and deliberately burns his hand with a Bunsen burner. Just then, the nanobots migrate toward the hand and repair the blisters in no time, leaving both Stephen and Andy astonished. On the other hand, Judy cannot help but notice the energy spurts in her soon-to-be husband. What would once tire Andy easily doesn't even have him breaking a sweat. So one night after an intense session, she finally asks Andy if he is on drugs. Though Andy denies it rightly, Judy decides to head back to her place since he has not been letting her rest for the past few days. days. After a few hours, Andy wakes up in pain in his neck, only to realize that he now has gills. He rushes to Steven, who interprets the gills to be the nanobot's reaction to Andy's inability to breathe underwater as a human. Since things are getting out of hand, he decides to deactivate them. However, when he connects to the logic gate, the nanobots refuse to be flushed out of the body until they have run their full course, attributing the lag to the delayed relay between numerous nanobots. Steven hopes they will be deactivated within some hours. He advises Andy to rest at his home and promises to meet him there. Later, Andy wakes up with intense pain in the back of his skull. He notices Steven pounding on the door, so he lets him in. Steven is shocked to find two small masses on the backside of Andy's head, which suddenly reveal themselves to be eyes. Andy starts freaking out, so Steven rushes him to his lab in hopes to disrupt the nanobots with controlled electric current. Despite several attempts, he is unable to completely eradicate the nanobots, with Andy almost flatlining at the last attempt. With a heavy heart, Steven informs Andy that the nanobots have already started duplicating in his body, and there is no way to stop them. Since Andy's heart might not be able to withstand more electric shock, they really have no way to fix him. In the next scene, Andy chokes on his food and realizes the nanobots have enhanced his hearing when his phone rings too loudly. He tells Judy that he loves her and ghosts her. Steven visits him and notices jellyfish-like stinging tentacles on Andy's skin. Apparently, the nanobots are mutating Andy's body to stop Steven's medical interventions. They have even created extra bones over Andy's abdomen to make him invincible. They go back to his lab where Andy tries to take his life by stabbing himself, but the nanobots push the knife out and revive him instantly. Andy urges Steven to kill him, but Steven refuses, thinking about Judy. He suggests seeking help from other scientists to figure a way out, but Andy reminds him that he does not want Judy to remember him like the freak he is now. Since the last current flow nearly killed him, Andy believes it to be their best bet at stopping the nanobots once and for all. He convinces Steven to shoot enough voltage through his body, and Steven reluctantly agrees. He apologizes to his friend for the misery he has caused him, to which Andy replies that he brought it upon himself. Heavy-hearted projects a lethal dose of electric current through Andy's body. Once he flatlines, Steven stops, only to have the nanobots revive him again. He is left with no choice but to use the highest voltage, which kills Andy while deactivating the nanobots. Next, he honors Andy's last wish of burning his body by setting his lab on fire and destroying all the remaining nanobots in his research. In the end, a grieving Judy is seen packing Andy's stuff when she accidentally nicks her finger while trying to pick up a framed photo of her and Andy. Just as she is about to tend her wound, she notices that the blood is gone and her wound has healed, which shows that the nanobots must have spread to her. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch the next videos on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.